The crystal palace of Varelia stood bright under the twin suns, its tall spires glowing like frozen lightning. Every corridor echoed with soft humming energy, and every guard stood perfectly still, watching for even the smallest threat. It was the heart of an ancient empire, feared across thousands of star systems. No outsider ever walked here freely. Yet today, a human man stood inside the Queen's grand hall, surrounded by alien nobles who did not know what to make of him. His name was Ethan Hale. He looked calm, but inside his chest, his heart beat harder than he wanted to admit. He was a stranger in a place where one wrong move could mean disaster. The aliens around him whispered quietly, studying his posture, his expression, even the way he breathed. Most had never seen a human before. Some had only heard rumors. Humans were stubborn, unpredictable, courageous, and able to survive situations most species could not. But the real reason everyone stared was not just because of him. It was because of the princess standing beside him. Princess Caroline, daughter of the Queen, heir to the Varelian throne, stood close to Ethan, closer than she had ever stood to any living being except her mother. Her hand rested lightly on his forearm, a silent symbol of connection that no one dared misinterpret. She was calm, collected, and graceful, but her closeness showed something deeper. Trust. Perhaps even affection. For weeks, rumors had spread that the princess had formed a strange bond with a human traveler. Many dismissed it as nonsense. But now she was standing beside him, steady and confident, proving every rumor true. The huge doors of the grand hall opened with a deep echoing note. The alien queen entered with slow, powerful steps. Her long cape flowed behind her like a river of shining scales. Every noble lowered their head to the floor. Every guard snapped to attention. But Ethan remained standing. Not out of disrespect, he simply didn't know their customs well enough. Still, he held his ground, because the last thing he wanted was to appear afraid. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly as she noticed him, but she said nothing at first. Her gaze traveled to her daughter, then back to the human. A quiet stillness filled the hall. Finally, the Queen spoke, her voice carrying across the chamber with a mix of authority and curiosity. "Who is he?" "Ender. Fiver." The question echoed like a stone dropped into a deep well. Every alien present held their breath. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but Caroline stepped forward before he could. She answered in a calm, steady voice that silenced the entire hall. "My human partner." The words struck harder than any weapon. Nobles gasped. Guards exchanged startled glances. Advisors stiffened. Even Ethan blinked, surprised by how boldly she said it. She didn't hide her connection. She didn't hesitate. She claimed him openly, in front of her mother, in front of the entire empire. The Queen's expression remained controlled, but a ripple of shock passed through her aura, visible to everyone in the way the air shimmered faintly around her. She approached slowly, her gaze fixed on the human who dared stand beside her daughter. Ethan refused to step back. His instincts whispered danger in every direction, but he remembered why he was here. Weeks ago, he had saved Caroline when her convoy was ambushed in an abandoned sector. He didn't know who she was at the time. He only saw someone in danger and acted without thinking. He shielded her from debris, helped her escape an explosion, and held off a creature that threatened to crush both of them. Even when he was injured, he refused to abandon her. Those moments created a bond neither had expected. Now, standing before her mother, he felt both proud and nervous. Caroline tightened her grip on his arm, sensing the tension spreading through the hall. She knew her mother's next words would decide everything. The Queen stopped a few steps away. She lifted her chin slightly and examined Ethan with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Do you understand the meaning of standing beside my daughter?" she asked carefully. "Do you understand the weight of the word partner in this palace?" Ethan swallowed once, then answered honestly, keeping his voice steady. "I do." And I'm here because I won't let anything harm her. I'll protect her. Saraline's eyes softened instantly. His words weren't loud, but they carried sincerity. She remembered those same words when he had stood bleeding while helping her escape. He hadn't said them to impress her. He said them because that was who he was. But the nobles didn't understand. To them, a human was too weak, too simple, too short-lived to stand beside a Varelian royal. A few whispered doubts, and some even eyed Ethan with irritation. Yet none dared speak loudly while the queen was present. The queen shifted her attention to her daughter. "Saraline," she said, "you have been careful with your heart your whole life. You trust few. You avoid alliances that feel forced. Why him? Why? Why? Why?" The princess looked at Ethan, then met her mother's gaze again. "Because he was not afraid of me," she said softly. "And he treated me like a person, not a crown." The queen paused. That answer carried truth. Most people approached the princess with fear, respect, or strategic intentions. A human who didn't even know she was royalty showed her genuine kindness and bravery. The queen could see the difference. Still, she had to be sure. She faced Ethan again. Many challenges will come if you remain by her side. Political pressure, danger, expectations. Are you prepared to face all of that? "I am," Ethan replied. "Whatever comes, I won't leave her." There was more strength in those few words than in any elaborate speech. Even the nobles felt it, though they tried to hide their reactions. Saraline stepped closer, standing fully beside him. Her hand remained on his arm. "Mother," she said gently, "I trust him, and I choose him." That sentence shifted the entire hall. The princess never used the words "I choose" lightly. It meant she had decided her own path, something no one could force her to abandon. The queen exhaled slowly, not disappointed, but thoughtful. She circled the pair, studying how they stood, how they breathed, how they responded to pressure. Ethan held his ground without hostility. Saraline remained steady, confident. Their bond was not built on sudden emotion. It had formed during real danger, real fear, and real decisions. The queen finally stopped in front of them. "Then let the galaxy witness your choice," she said, but her voice carried a quiet warning beneath it. "Your bond will be tested. Not by me, but by the challenges that come with it." Ethan nodded firmly. "I'm ready." Saraline looked relieved, not because she doubted him, but because he didn't flinch. She leaned very slightly toward him, a gesture of silent appreciation. Some nobles saw it and shifted uncomfortably, still unsure how they felt about this human. The queen lifted her hand. A hush fell over the hall. Light swirled around her palm, forming a subtle symbol of acceptance. Not full approval yet, but enough to let everyone know she would not stand in the way. The hall buzzed with whispers again, but no one dared question the queen's decision. Guards stood tall. Officials murmured nervously. Some believed the empire would grow stronger with a human partner in the royal family. Others believed it was a dangerous risk. But everyone knew one thing for certain: nothing would remain the same after today. Ethan stood straighter. Saraline stayed proudly at his side. This was not the end of their journey, it was the beginning. Outside the palace windows, the twin suns dipped slightly, casting long golden lines through the hall, as if marking the moment. Even the air seemed to carry a different energy, like the Empire had taken its first step into an unexpected, unknown future. Ethan could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes on him, but he didn't mind. He wasn't afraid. Not anymore. He had made his choice too. Beside him, the princess whispered just loud enough for him to hear, "I'm glad you're here." He smiled quietly. "I'm not going anywhere." And with that, the hall doors closed behind them as the next chapter of their lives slowly began to unfold. After the Queen accepted their bond publicly, even if only partly, the palace atmosphere changed in ways Ethan did not fully understand at first. The halls that once felt cold and distant now carried a strange mix of curiosity, quiet stiffness, and sometimes silent respect. But there was also suspicion. Many nobles still questioned how a human, someone from a species considered physically weaker and politically irrelevant, could stand beside the Princess of Varelia. Ethan learned very quickly that being accepted by the Queen was not the same as being accepted by the entire empire. The Queen's approval gave him protection. The people's acceptance had yet to be earned. Still, he followed Caroline closely through the corridors, listening, observing, and trying to learn as much as he could. Caroline noticed his quiet tension one morning as they walked through a courtyard filled with blue-leafed trees that shimmered like metal. "Are you uncomfortable?" she asked softly. "Just thinking," Ethan replied. "A lot is new. I want to understand everything correctly." She smiled a little. "You don't need to understand everything at once. You only need to stay honest and stay beside me." He nodded, feeling a gentle warmth at her words. He didn't know if he deserved her trust, but he wasn't going to fail her now. Around them, palace attendants watched from a distance, unsure whether to bow to the human or pretend he did not exist. Some whispered behind their hands. Some simply stared. Ethan tried to ignore it, but he soon learned there were things he could not ignore. Later that day, the Queen summoned both of them to her chamber, a large room with tall windows, floating lights, and a long metallic table carved with ancient symbols. She was standing by the window, looking outside, when they arrived. "You may enter," she said without turning. Ethan followed Caroline inside. The Queen finally faced them, her eyes calm but sharp. "I have been informed," she began, "that several nobles expressed concern over your presence here, human. Some fear you are a political weakness. Others believe you may bring danger." Ethan stayed quiet, letting her continue. "Normally," the Queen said, "I would dismiss such concerns, but because you stand beside my daughter, I cannot ignore them. So I must ask you directly, do you feel prepared for what this bond demands?" Ethan answered without hesitation. "Yes." The Queen nodded slightly. "Then, you must prove it not to me, but to those who doubt your place here. A test will be held tomorrow." Caroline's eyes widened. "Mother, is that necessary?" "It is," the Queen replied. "The court needs assurance, and you chose him in front of the entire empire. That decision carries consequences." Caroline looked worried for Ethan, but he placed a hand on her arm gently. "It's okay," he said. "If a test is needed, I'll face it." The Queen studied him carefully, her expression unreadable. "This test is not a physical battle," she said. "It is a trial of character. You will face challenges designed to reveal your intentions, your patience, and your resolve." Ethan nodded again. He wasn't afraid of tests. He had survived worse situations during his travels. But he also knew this test was not about survival. It was about trust. The Queen continued, "If you pass, the nobles will have no choice but to respect your bond with Caroline. If you fail..." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. The silence spoke for itself. Caroline stepped forward. "Mother, I will stand with him during the test." The Queen shook her head gently. "No. This is his trial alone. If he succeeds only because of your presence, the nobles will say he leaned on your power. He must succeed by his own strength." Lows. Caroline lowered her eyes. But she knew her mother was right. Ethan placed his hand over hers for a moment, reassuring her. "I'll be fine," he said softly. The Queen dismissed them. But Ethan could see a faint hint of something in her eyes. Something like honor, or maybe hope. She wasn't trying to push them apart. She was testing whether the human could be someone the Empire could depend on. As they left the chamber, Saraline walked silently, troubled. She shook her head quickly. No. I think the test is meant to scare you, and I don't want you to face pressure alone. Ethan smiled gently. Pressure is fine. I faced worse when I didn't know your world or your people. Now I have a reason to stay strong. Think. Her expression softened again. She admired his courage more than she could say. I just don't like that they doubt you, she whispered. It's okay, Ethan replied. They doubt me, because they don't know me yet. He wasn't angry. He understood that trust took time. The next morning, the trial began. A large portion of the palace gathered in the Hall of Clarity, an open, circular room with a glowing floor and floating platforms. Ethan stood alone in the center, while nobles sat above, on raised balconies. Saraline was not allowed inside. She stood outside, gripping the doorframe, trying to see through the gap whenever it opened. The queen sat at the highest balcony, looking down calmly. A council member approached Ethan with a small, glowing orb. This trial will reveal your intentions, he announced. If your heart is deceitful or your motives unclear, the orb will react. Ethan didn't fully understand how it worked, but he saw no reason to fear. He placed his hands on the orb. Immediately it glowed gently, not sharply, and the council member nodded with surprise. He is steady, the alien said. His thoughts are honest. Some nobles murmured in disbelief. Then came the second test. A projection formed in front of Ethan, a simulated crisis showing Saraline in danger. Guards wanted to see his reaction. Would he freeze? Would he panic? Would he run? The vision was so realistic Ethan's heart tightened, but he knew it was only a test. Still, he reacted instantly. Stepping forward protectively, positioning himself between the danger and the image of Saraline. The nobles watched closely. He moved without hesitation, one whispered. He is not pretending, another observed. The projection faded, and the queen's expression softened almost invisibly. For the third and final test, Ethan had to answer questions about loyalty, responsibility, and what he saw for the future. The questions weren't difficult, because he didn't lie. He spoke plainly, simply, and sincerely. If you stay by her side, one elder asked, what do you seek in return? That. Nothing, Ethan answered. I didn't help her expecting a reward. I saved her because I could, and I stand beside her, because I choose to. And if she loses her power one day, another noble pressured, then I'd still stay, Ethan said firmly. I'm here for her, not for the crown. Those words carried through the hall like a warm wave, quieting the whispers. Even the elders exchanged thoughtful glances. When the trial ended, Ethan stood silently in the center, feeling sweat on his palms but relief in his chest. He didn't know if he passed, but he knew he had spoken his truth. The queen finally stood. Her voice echoed across the hall. The trial is complete. The human's intentions are clear. His loyalty is genuine. His heart is steady. Nobles leaned forward. I acknowledge him as my daughter's chosen partner. The hall erupted in reactions: shock, acceptance, curiosity, even reluctant respect. Ethan exhaled slowly, feeling weight lift from his chest. Outside the hall, Saraline waited anxiously. When the doors opened and she saw Ethan standing tall and unharmed, she rushed forward. She didn't run, because princesses didn't run, but she moved faster than she ever had before. You passed, she whispered, relief flooding her voice. And I told you I'd be fine, Ethan replied with a small smile. Saraline touched his shoulder gently, her eyes bright with pride. You did more than fine. You proved everyone wrong. Ethan hesitated before answering. She looked at him with something deeper than gratitude, something warm and unspoken. The bond between them grew stronger without needing any words. From a distance, the queen watched them, her expression unreadable, but not cold. Perhaps she saw something she had not expected, a future her daughter chose freely, with someone who did not fear their world, their rules, or the enormous responsibility ahead. The twin suns shone through the palace windows, marking the end of the trial and the start of a new chapter, one where Ethan was no longer just a stranger in the royal halls. He was now someone the Empire recognized, someone the princess trusted, someone the queen would watch with careful expectations, and someone who was beginning to understand that his journey beside Caroline would shape not only their lives, but perhaps the entire future of the Varelian Empire. The days following Ethan's successful trial were unlike anything the palace had experienced before. For the first time in Varelian history, a human walked freely inside the royal halls, without guards shadowing each of his steps. Some nobles bowed politely now, while others simply nodded stiffly, unsure how to behave towards someone the queen herself had acknowledged. But no one dared challenge him openly anymore. His sincerity during the trial had reached places even political speeches could not. Ethan didn't enjoy attention, and Caroline knew that. So she kept him close, guiding him through less crowded paths around the palace. She showed him the gardens where plants floated instead of growing from soil. She showed him the soft light chambers where Varelians meditated. She even showed him a small, quiet room where she often hid from royal duties when she was younger. "This is my secret place," she told him quietly. "I only share it with someone I trust." Ethan felt honored. The room was simple. A curved wall, soft lights, a window looking out into open sky, but it meant the world to her. He sat beside her at the window, comfortable in the silence. It amazed him how easy it was to be around her. She didn't need him to impress her, and he didn't need her to be perfect. They just existed together, peacefully. But peace could never last long in a royal palace. One morning, the Queen's advisor arrived with urgent news. "Your Majesty," he said with a trembling voice, "there is unrest in the outer sectors. A rival council believes the humans' presence weakens the throne. They are spreading messages calling for action." The Queen's eyes hardened, but her voice stayed calm. "Action? What kind of action?" "They plan to challenge your authority," the advisor answered, "and they may send forces to the capital." Caroline's heart tightened. "Because of Ethan?" "Yes, Princess. They claim his presence disrupts the ancient traditions." Ethan stood silent, guilt creeping into his thoughts. He never wanted to cause trouble for Caroline or her mother. But the Queen raised a hand, stopping him from speaking. "This is not your fault," she said firmly. "Those who fear change always look for excuses. If it wasn't you, they would find another reason." Caroline touched Ethan's arm gently. "Mother is right. Do not blame yourself." But Ethan still felt the pressure. He knew he was an outsider. He knew change rarely came without conflict. And now, the conflict was approaching fast. The Queen continued, "If the rival council sends envoys, or even troops, they will expect us to bend. We will not." The advisor lowered his head. "They demand proof that the human is worthy of standing beside the princess. They want him to participate in a diplomatic summit. They say if he fails, they will not accept the Queen's decision." Caroline frowned deeply. "Summit? They want to test him again?" "It seems so," the Queen replied. "But this summit will not be a simple trial. It will be political, dangerous. They want to see if he can stand calm, under direct pressure from our enemies." Ethan exhaled slowly. "If it's needed, I'll go." Caroline looked at him with concern. "You don't have to carry all this by yourself." "I know," he said softly. "But I want to. I'm beside you. That means I share the weight." The Queen studied him carefully. Her gaze was less sharp now, less suspicious. There was a hint of respect in it. "This summit," she said, "is not about proving your loyalty. You have already done that. It is about showing them your strength, your patience, and your ability to represent peace instead of conflict. Ethan nodded. I'll do my best. The next day, a transport vessel was prepared. The summit was being held in the neutral sector, a floating station surrounded by energy shields. Only selected representatives were allowed inside. Ethan wore simple but formal clothing provided by the palace. Caroline wore her royal attire, glowing slightly under the station lights. The queen could not join. She had to remain in the capital. But she sent Saralini and Ethan with a final instruction. Stand together, she said, and show them that unity is not weakness. Their journey was quiet and heavy. Caroline held Ethan's hand gently, something she rarely did in public. If they say anything hurtful, ignore it, she told him. They will try to frighten you. They will try to make you doubt yourself. Ethan smiled quietly. I've faced worse than insults. She exhaled softly, relieved by his strength. When they arrived, the summit chamber was already full. The rival council members stood in a circle, robes heavy with symbols of their own authority. Their leader, a tall alien with silver skin, stepped forward and examined Ethan with disdain. So, the leader said, this is the human the princess has chosen. He looks ordinary. Ethan didn't respond. He kept his posture relaxed, refusing to show irritation. One council member demanded, what gives a human the right to stand beside a royal heir? Caroline answered sharply, surprising everyone. I chose him. That is enough. The room fell silent for a moment. The leader smirked. Princess, emotions make poor political decisions. Humans are fragile, unpredictable. They live short lives. How can someone so temporary be your equal? Ethan felt the sting of those words, but he didn't react. Instead, he calmly looked at the speaker and said, my lifespan may be shorter, but that does not make my loyalty weak. I stand with the princess, not because of power, but because I value her as a person. The council members exchanged puzzled looks. They weren't used to such simple, honest words. Another counselor stepped forward. Human, what will you do when danger comes? Hide behind the queen's guards? Ethan shook his head. No. When Caroline was in danger, I stood in front of her. I didn't run. I won't start running now. This time, several council members were forced to acknowledge his confidence. But the leader was not done yet. Words are cheap, he said. If your heart is so steady, prove it. If you stand beside the princess, you must show more than loyalty. You must show wisdom. He activated a hologram table. Symbols, shapes, and complex political scenarios appeared. This is a crisis simulation, he said. 3 political paths. One wrong choice can lead to destruction. Choose, and tell us why. Ethan stared at the hologram quietly. He wasn't a strategist. He wasn't a diplomat. But he had spent enough time traveling across different worlds to understand people, and sometimes people made things more complicated than necessary. He pointed at the simplest path. This one, the leader frowned. Why? That is the least aggressive strategy. Act 2-2. Exactly, Ethan replied. Aggression invites more aggression. But peace, if offered, sincerely reduces fear. And fear is what creates conflict. If you want stability, you must show trust first. The room went silent. A few council members nodded reluctantly. One whispered, he understands. Another said, he is simple, but not foolish. The leader tried one last attempt to break Ethan's confidence. Ethan answered calmly, if war comes, I will protect her. If peace comes, I will support her. Whatever comes, I won't leave her. Saralini's eyes softened with admiration. She took a small step closer to Ethan, making their bond even more visible. The council whispered among themselves for several long minutes. Finally, The leader raised his head. "We do not like change," he said, "but we cannot deny what we have seen." The human speaks with honesty, not ambition. His presence does not weaken the princess. It strengthens her. Saraline's breath caught in her chest. The leader continued, "We will not oppose their bond." Relief washed over the chamber like a fresh wave. Saraline turned to Ethan, her eyes bright. "You did it," she whispered. "No," he said softly. "We did it." When they returned to the palace, the queen waited at the entrance. When she saw them walking together, calm, confident, united, she felt something she hadn't felt in many years. Peace. "You faced them well," the queen said. Ethan bowed respectfully. "Thank you." The queen looked at Saraline, then at Ethan, and spoke in a gentle voice that surprised them both. "I see now why my daughter chose you. Not because you are strong in the ways of warriors or wise in the ways of rulers, but because you are steady in spirit. That is rare. Even in this palace." Saraline stood beside Ethan proudly. "Mother," she said softly, "I am happy with him." The queen nodded, accepting not just their bond, but the future it promised. From that day forward, Ethan was no longer just a visitor. He became a symbol of unity, proof that courage, sincerity, and kindness could bridge the distance between worlds. And wherever Saraline went, Ethan walked beside her. Not as a stranger, not as a burden, but as her chosen partner. And in the quiet corners of the palace under twin suns, beside shimmering gardens, or within the halls of history, their story continued, stronger than ever, shaping the empire in ways no one had ever imagined.